What's the story, Morning Glory? What's the word, Hummingbird? Thank you so much for clicking on my channel and for joining me for this review of Love and Marriage Huntsville, Season 4, Episode 4, Keke, Do You Love Me? So we start off with Melody and Tiffany. They're meeting up at Melody's house, and they're talking about all the stuff that went down at Melody's pajama party. So specifically, they're talking about what happened between Tiffany and Stormy. And so we all know that Tiffany and Stormy, they had this argument, disagreement, whatever you want to call it, at the pajama party. And Melody tells Tiffany that, you know what, not everybody is meant to be besties. And it's okay if you don't get along with someone. It's perfectly okay. You don't have to force friendships between people who are just naturally were not meant to be friends. So then Tiffany talks about Martell's book signing event. And she asked Melody why she didn't bring the children. And Melody said, number one, Martell had given her very short notice about the event. Number two, it was her week with the children. And number three, there was a death in her family. And so she had already had plans that the children were going to spend time with her and her family. And so then Tiffany was like, oh, I didn't know that. Well, there's always three sides to every story, yours, his, and the truth. And Melody was like, what do you mean three sides to every story? I will always be on the side of the truth because I don't lie about stuff like that. So then Tiffany says, well, Martell seemed really sad that y'all weren't there. And Melody was like, what do you mean, y'all? I wasn't invited. He was only inviting the children. Then they talk about the difficulties of divorce. And then Tiffany shares with Melody, that she herself is also divorced and what she went through in her own situation. And so then Melody was like, well, do you mind telling me why did you guys file for divorce? And Tiffany basically says that her husband was too broke for her. He didn't have enough money for her. She wanted to live a certain lifestyle, and he just wasn't cutting it. And she got tired of working and not accumulating any wealth. And so she decided to leave him and go find a man with more money. And Tiffany, I understand that you're trying to be more transparent. That's fine. We do want you to be more transparent, but you don't have to reveal, your deepest, darkest secrets to the whole wide world, and just every thought that runs through your head, you feel like you have to express it. I couldn't believe that she said that she left her ex-husband because he was too broke for her and she wanted a man with more money. So my question is, Tiffany, did you marry Lewis because of his money, and that's the only reason why you married him? So then she tells Melody that after her divorce, she had realized that her ex-husband had really, really loved her, and that he gave her that kind of unconditional love. He accepted her with all of her flaws. He really loved and cherished her son as well. And she realized that that man was really her soulmate. And so Melody was like, girl, that was your soulmate? And Tiffany said yes. And I'm like, okay. So now Lewis is going to find that out, that you feel like your ex-husband was your soulmate. So, like I said, Tiffany, you don't have to reveal every single thought that runs across your head. I just couldn't believe that she was admitting all this stuff, knowing that her husband was going to watch it. Maybe her and Lewis had already discussed this and he already knows about it and he doesn't mind. But I'm pretty sure that if it does come out and if he is confronted with this information, he's going to act like it's no big deal, because they always want to make it look like that their marriage is the strongest marriage on the show. And I'm pretty sure Tiffany's going to act like, well, you can have more than one soulmate. Yeah, you probably can have more than one soulmate. No one doubts that. But you didn't say in this particular conversation, in this specific scene, you didn't say, well, yeah, he was my soulmate, but I believe that Lewis is my soulmate now. So yeah, you look kind of crazy out there. And then Tiffany proceeds to talk about how she finally realized that, money does not equate happiness, but she had to go through her own process to get to that conclusion. Moving on. So we move on to Tisha and Kimmy. Tisha comes over to Kimmy's house, and Kimmy says that she wanted Tisha to come over just to make sure that she was good. So, they talk about Kimmy's response at the reunion when the question was asked if she would hang out with Tisha if they were not related. And Kimmy had very clearly said that no, she would not hang out with Tisha if they were not related. Now Kimmy is trying to backpedal and say, well, she didn't mean it like that. What she really meant was that, because her and Tisha were going through their ups and downs and they were having all of these little arguments, that she's not the kind of person who would normally hang out with someone that she argues with. with. I think that's what she was trying to say. It was really convoluted and confusing because it wasn't the truth. Kimmy, you know that you would not be hanging out with someone like Tisha if y'all were not related, because y'all are actually related now, and you're not hanging out with her now because one of Tisha's biggest complaints last season was that you don't make enough time for her. So you want us to believe now that you would be hanging out with Tisha voluntarily if y'all were not sisters-in-law. You would still be hanging out with her when y'all are in the same family and you still don't hang out with her. So miss me with that, Kimmy. You meant what you said, and how we took it is exactly how it was meant to be taken, that Tisha's not your cup of tea and you would not hang out with someone like her if y'all were not related, because y'all are related and you're still not hanging out. So then Kimmy said that, she talks about her little honeymoon with Maurice, and she had a really good time. And she says that she definitely wants to go back, but she wants to go back as a group. So I guess that's going to be the group vacation to, was it the Dominican or Puerto Rico or wherever they went. So, and they talk about Melody's party, and Kimmy tells Tisha that the only people that weren't there were Tisha and Destiny, but Melody took it upon herself to invite Tisha's cousin, Keke. She tells Tisha that Keke has said some stuff that had happened in the past to make Tisha, look at her marriage kind of. So she was referring to the scene where I think somebody had asked, I think it was Melody, that had asked if Marceau had ever done anything that would make Tisha question her marriage. And Keke said, yes, there has been incidents in the past where stuff has been brought to Tisha, which made her kind of re-examine her marriage to Marceau. Tisha says in her confessional that Keke is her cousin, but they're definitely not friends. And so Melody was using Keke to kind of like team up against her, because we know that Melody and Tisha don't really see it for each other. And then Tisha proceeds to say in her confessional, blood ain't thicker than blood. I don't know what that meant. And so Kimmy tells her that you're going to have a conversation with Keke at some point. Moving on. So now we're going to have a meeting with Marceau, Maurice, and Louis at the Black Lounge. So they want to address the whole issue between Marceau and Louis about Louis saying things about Marceau's marriage and the way Marceau acted at the reunion towards Louis. So Louis tells Marceau that, you came at me a little bit hard at the reunion. And Marceau says, well, you really haven't earned the right to pass judgment on my marriage and to critique my marriage. And so they talk about that. So the whole point that Marceau was trying to make was that we're not close like that. We're not tight like that. We're not bros like that, where you can, talk about my marriage and give your opinion about my marriage. And then Louis said something like, well, I saw with my own eyes that you and your wife were like having this failure to communicate, a breakup in communication. And then Marceau was like, well, I don't care about, what you thought about our communication or what you thought was going on in our marriage. You just don't have the right to say that me and my wife have a bad marriage, because Louis and Tiffany definitely said that they had a bad marriage, or their marriage was not a good one. And so Marceau had issues with that. So, Louis had said something like, oh, okay, yeah, well, that's how you feel and that's how you feel. So yeah, I get it. And then Marceau was like, well, you're making it seem like this is one of those situations where we agree to disagree. So we need some clarification. This is not a we agree to disagree type of thing. I'm telling you that you were wrong about passing judgment on my marriage. And it seems like Louis still just really wasn't understanding. And so finally, Maurice had to step in and give an example and say, look, the way me and him are, and he was referring to Marceau, I can say things about his marriage, but you just really haven't earned the right to say the same type of things, like to judge his marriage. And I remember there was also a moment when Louis had said something like, well, me and Marceau, we go all the way back to 1999. And, we know each other. And Marceau was like, I don't know you. I know of you, but I don't know you. We've seen each other in passing. We've seen each other in events. We say hi to each other, but we're not tight like that. And so when Maurice gave this example, or whatever example he gave, it seemed like it finally clicked to Louis, like, okay, now I see what you're saying, that I should not have passed judgment on your marriage. Now I finally get it. And he apologized to Marceau. Now, in his confessional, Louis had said that, yeah, I apologize to Marceau, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I feel like I was wrong in what I did. I apologize for what I said, but as far as my actions, I was not wrong. And so then Maurice asks Marceau if he's going to apologize to Louis for coming at him so hard at the reunion. And Marceau finally relented and apologized. So y'all see how when Louis wanted Marceau to apologize, Marceau apologized. But when his own wife wants him to do certain things to prove to the world that their marriage is good, he refuses to do that. But he was easy to apologize. It was easy for him to apologize to Louis when Louis asked for an apology. Okay. So, and then also Maurice in his confessional had he said something about how, Marceau had always been a very kind-hearted person, but like recently he's been kind of like hard around the edges. Like he's really hard in his heart. And Maurice doesn't quite understand why there's this change in Marceau where he's like a little bit meaner or he's not as kind. And I thought that was an interesting observation by Maurice. And I really didn't know what he meant by that because obviously we didn't know Marceau when he was younger. I mean, to me, Marceau has always been Marceau, and I can't really imagine him being, this really kind and, gentle spirit. He's always been kind of like, blunt and in your face. Moving on to Martel. So Martel is meeting with his manager, Melnika. Basically, what this scene is showing us is that Martel is booked and busy. He's got books coming out. He's got the winery coming out. He's really out there taking full advantage of this opportunity to create multiple streams of income and get a whole bunch of businesses going. The only thing that I have to suggest to Martel is this. Martel, the way you are with your fashion, I don't understand why you don't have a clothing line or a suit line. Something like what Steve Harvey did, but with a Martel twist. I'm not understanding that because your fashion, you have fashion. You understand fashion. You like to dress a certain way, like to look a certain way. To you, it's more than just putting on a suit and tie and going out. You really like to put a flair in how you look. So I don't understand why he doesn't have a clothing line. Please put that on your list on your to-do list because that's what I really want to see from Martel. And then Monica tells him like with how you are coming across on social media, how you're like going back and forth with different people on social media and the stuff that you post, you kind of have to tame that down because now you have a brand to protect and you want companies to work with you. So you really need to kind of shut it down a little bit on the craziness that you're doing on social media. Moving on to Tiffany and Stormy. So they're having a meeting, I guess, to kind of regroup and restart and see if they can be on the same page. So Stormy invites Tiffany out for drinks and they talk about, Stormy having a baby through IVF, and Tiffany asked Stormy would she think about ever having more children, and Stormy was like no, because I almost died with this pregnancy. She talked about the trauma that she went through during the birthing process, and so she's like, you know what, I'm good, I'm one and done. So then Tiffany talks about the possibility of her having a baby, possibly having a baby with Louis. And so I don't really care for Tiffany and, Louis, I can take him or leave him, but Tiffany, but I really would hope it would be nice. I think it'd be a beautiful thing if her and Louis had a child together. And, I think they should really definitely consider that. I think it'd be a great idea for them to have a baby. And so then Tiffany tells Stormy about her own background because I think Stormy asked her, well, tell me something a little bit more about your background. And so Tiffany told her about being put in the foster care system. And then they showed this montage of Tiffany just talking, and Stormy not being able to put in any kind of input. And you can tell Stormy, her eyes were just kind of glazing over. She was kind of like drifting off into the distance. Tiffany loves to talk about herself and she loves to hear herself talk. So at the end of it all, Tiffany asks Stormy, so are we good? And then Stormy says, I mean, we're getting to know each other. And so then Tiffany was like, well, is that good or bad? And then Stormy's like, well, it is what it is. I just don't see Tiffany and Stormy being friends. The kind of person that Tiffany is, where she kind of acts like she's really highfalutin, she's like kind of bougie. I don't really see her hanging out with Stormy. Stormy is probably a little bit too real for Tiffany. So moving on from that, Tisha and Keke finally have their meeting. They're going to have their meeting at Black, like everything else takes place at Black. And so Tisha gets there first, and as soon as she walks in, she walks up to the bar, and Jalen, Kimmy's son and Maurice's stepson, is working at the bar. So we all know that Jalen works for Black, and he works for Tisha and Marceau. And there was this incident, I think it was last season or the season before, when he first started working for them. It seemed like they were kind of taking advantage of him and working him a little bit too hard. That boy basically lives at Black, and he does work really hard for them. But I do also think that Marceau and Tisha are kind of taking advantage of him. I seriously doubt that they're paying him what he deserves to be paid. I'm not all in their books like that, but it seems like it. That's just my assumption. And so as soon as Tisha arrives, she walks up to the bar and she asks Jalen, why isn't he wearing his suit? So I guess he has to have a certain kind of attire for the night crowd. And Jalen says, well, I've been working all day long. I haven't had a chance yet to go home and change. And so then Tisha was like, well, make sure that you change into your suit. And so he's like, yeah, I'll go home and I'll come back and I'll change or whatever. And I'm like, Tisha, let this man work and leave him the hell alone. You're not even there for that. So when Keke finally arrives, Tisha brings up that she had heard that Keke was talking about her and her marriage at Melody's Melody's pajama party. And Tisha lets it be known that she doesn't like it. She didn't like it that Keke was talking about her marriage with these other people. And, she wasn't there. I was like, what business do you have talking about my marriage and what I went through in my marriage? And so then Keke says, well, let's not forget that you did the very same thing to me. Now, in Keke's confessional, she says that Tisha has talked about her business too. So evidently 4 or 5 years ago, Melody and Martell were hosting some type of a Christmas party, I think. Tisha and Marceau obviously were invited and they were allowed to bring a guest. And I guess the guest that she brought was her cousin Keke. So before Keke arrived at the said party, Tisha made it a point to tell Melody that Keke is going through something. For whatever reason, she felt the need to warn Melody that Keke is going through something personally. And she just wanted to give Melody a heads up. I don't know why she felt the need to tell Melody. Like, is she going, like, maybe I guess if she showed up in a certain kind of mood and Melody was wondering if she was okay, she already knew from Tisha that she's going through something. So Keke had put it that when she arrived, she had heard that Tisha and Melody were laughing about her personal issues. And Tisha was like, we were not laughing. And did you ever think that maybe whoever told you this could have been lying to you? And I guess she was referring to Melody. And Keke was like, well, I would believe they were lying, except that what they told me was actually true. So there's this whole thing now between Keke and Tisha where Keke's like, well, you talked about my personal business first to Melody, so why are you so bothered about me talking about your business? And Tisha is like, well, first of all, we have squashed all of that. First of all, Tisha tried to deny that she even talked about her personal stuff to Melody. And then Keke was like, but you apologized for it. We talked about it. You even apologized for even talking about my business, putting my business out there on Front Street. You even apologized for it. And so I guess when Tisha felt like she lost that part of the argument, she was like, well, why are we even talking about something that happened 4 or 5 years ago? If it bothered you that much, why didn't you address it then? Well, evidently she did address it, and that's why you apologized. So, but then again, Keke, like that, you can't say, well, I talked about you and your marriage because you talked about my stuff 5 years ago. That doesn't make any sense, especially since you claim that you and Tisha has squashed it. Tisha apologized and y'all are moving on. It's wrong for you now to bring that up as a justification for talking about her business. That's just wrong. So evidently there's some deep issues between Keke and Tisha, which I think is beyond what we saw on this episode. It goes much deeper and it goes back way further than what we were led on to know or what we were led on to believe. And I don't know if we're ever going to get to the bottom of it. So then Tisha tells Keke, well, why don't we just sever all ties now? And Keke was like, well, is that what you really want to do? And so then Tisha gets up, she walks outside and she gets on her phone and she calls Kimmy and she tells Kimmy what just went down between her and Keke. And, Kimmy's listening to this and she was like, oh my God, girl, that's what happened. And as she's talking to Kimmy, Keke comes out and she walks up to Tisha and she's like, so who are you talking about me to now? And that's where the episode ended. So evidently, I don't know. To me, Tisha doesn't seem like a girl's girl. She doesn't seem like someone who knows how to really get along with other females. I don't know exactly why or what that is. I think a lot of it is insecurity within herself. I think a lot of it is, I don't know. I don't know if she comes off kind of judgy, because I don't believe. I know some people feel like Tisha and Marcel have like a really beautiful, wonderful union and that they're really strong together. I just don't see it. And I could be wrong. I could be extremely wrong, but I just don't see this marriage as being like a very healthy one. Now, maybe Marcel is 100% faithful to Tisha and he's not, messing around on her. But within their marriage, I just don't see. I feel like Marceau expected a certain kind of wife, and I think Tisha was giving that to him in the beginning. But now maybe Tisha wants more than just the cooking and the cleaning and taking care of children. And I don't think Marceau is really crazy about that, because we did see that in previous seasons where he just was not enthusiastic at all about her going back to school, getting her degrees, becoming her own person, her own businesswoman. He really wasn't crazy about that. And we see so far this season that she's not really doing much other than helping him out with Black and with his construction business. Like, what happened to her own real estate? Is she selling houses? Like, what's going on now? But anyways, yeah, so Tisha and Keke, I hope we get to the bottom of it, of exactly why they don't really see it for each other, but it is what it is. Stormy and Tiffany, I really don't see them being the best of friends. And Martell, a suit line, fashion line, clothes, please look into that. Thank you so much for joining me in this review. If you made it this far, I really do appreciate it. On your way out, please don't forget to rate the video, and most definitely, please don't forget to subscribe. And I'll talk to you later. Bye.